Gen Z, you have a big problem. Because according to numerous articles you can find online, your attention span is failing. They are reporting that according to research, in the last 15 years, the average attention span has dropped from 12 seconds to 8.25 seconds. That's a pretty serious problem, man, because think about it. If that's actually true, and we continue along this level of decline, then in about 30 years' time, the human species will be simply too dumb to live. 30 years? That's actually really serious. Or, that attention span claim is just yet another bunch of over-sensationalized bullshit like everything else in this society that you guys are now looking to inherit. Gen Z, you really do have a big problem, because the entire modern world is designed to manipulate you and scare you into serving its goals. But you yourselves are also half that problem, because you too are producing this stuff, promoting this stuff, sharing this stuff, and encouraging its continuation. You may, however, also be the solution as well. I've seen a few Gen Z YouTubers pushing this narrative of the failing attention span as if it's just some given. Some even state it as some justification for giving up on life entirely. Now, they don't want to give up on life, but they've cottoned on to this idea that there is no hope for them, and there isn't much out there to counter this narrative. But they also don't seem to delve any deeper either. They've just heard this phrase, you have a failing attention span, and that's it. They just sign on without question. They even steelman it, thrusting it to the forefront as some excuse to not engage in this overly complex world. I recognize this behavior because it's what we did as well, just like our parents and I think all other generations in this historical era. Humans seek comfort and ease by default, and in this modern age we're taught to feel that this is inherently bad. The last thing we want to be is lazy. But think about it. In the context of basic essential life mechanics, inactivity is calorie retention. You've taken in this many calories, so you wind down your output to conserve them until finding another source. Watch a pride of lions. Once they've eaten, what do? There ain't one lion out there who's built different. You don't see lions hustling. No, they're out lounging around like a bunch of lazy fat fucks doing the absolute least they could possibly do, because in reality, moving around more than you need to is actually a stupid thing to do. But humans don't live in reality. This historical period, as in the period where we began recording history, this is a fantasy land. We live now within the confines and demands of institution, where we now need to maintain the function and order of massive populations. But as necessary as that may be, it does not mean we chose the right path. Evolution does not work that way. It is not based upon design, and what comes after isn't always better. You hear a lot of people using the phrase, what is the evolutionary advantage of this or that? Well, quite often there ain't one. Evolution is just physics. Shit happened, this is the result. We went 300,000 years in this form, not to mention millions of years before that in a very similar form, evolving and refining our physiological reward systems within a tribal context where everything was shared. But 10,000 years ago, we developed agriculture, and the concept of wealth and ownership was placed into our minds. A lot of animals have a concept of territory, but for us, that territory was the tribes. Agriculture brought the idea of this person having more than that one. With that comes the concept of power, that this person is better than that one. Now, we have the concepts of hierarchy and institution, and retaining our wealth only to serve the nuclear family. And now, we're a bunch of self-serving pricks. Our societies are not natural for us, and we devote ourselves to fabrication. Take these red pill guys that are all over the place now. These guys are all about money and wealth and power, possessions, status, and winning the trophy of this woman away from that guy. Because everything's a competition now, right? Nothing is shared. A common tagline with these guys is to leave the Matrix. But everything they promote is literally the Matrix, because none of it even existed for 99% of our timeline. Every one of those things disappear the moment we simply agree to ignore them. These guys are the Matrix, and they are enticing you into a lifestyle of ever-increasing solitude and ever-depreciating returns in which you will never achieve peace. In this historical world, we now need to construct luxuries like this straw. And these luxuries require us to spend more calories than we otherwise would in order to make them. So in turn, we have developed the concept of laziness. Now we prioritize overperformance, and in turn our natural optimal states are considered lazy. But back in prehistory, laziness wasn't a thing. You did what was needed for the tribe, or you died. That was it. Once you took in those calories, you might have worked on certain interests like developing a better shelter or more efficient fish trap, but you did that for the tribe. And overly working and not preserving those calories was actually a stupid thing to do. So now, within the delusions of this straw, or this religion, or these matrix vendors, or pushing this modern concept of laziness, we are underperforming despite us meeting the requirements of reality just fine. And we buy into these falsities, and we feel less because of them, so in turn seek whatever excuse we can find to check out. Some take the superior intellectual approach and use big smart words to promote ideologies like anarchism.
It's like right towards me.
Oh! Oh my! You got me! You got me! Ah!
Keep going.
Oh my god! I'm not eating that shit! Fuck that!
Or the ever-shining beacon of self-awareness and rational foresight that is Marxism.
No! Right! Oh god! Oh, I keep off! Hand sanitizer seems to be a work.
Because of course, original creative thought is now highly discouraged in this marketer's haven of sequels, reboots, and the clickbait header, and any true forward-thinking progressive must therefore thrust themselves backward into the echo chamber of a 19th century ideologue. Most people, though, tend to cling to a ball and chain. They find some perceived flaw in themselves to nurture as the reason why they're failing. It could be body weight, or race, or gender, or religion, or a disability. My attention span is failing. Good, I'm out. But here's the thing. I actually think your attention span is fine. It's everything around us that's the problem. I am not going to show any one specific article because that ain't the point of this video. There are a million out there promoting this same narrative. Just Google search any one of the statements I cover here and you'll find them. Human beings have a very unhelpful tendency to scapegoat because we choose the easy way out by default. Again, it saves calories. There'll be some massive systemic problem in some institution or other, and people will heap all of the blame onto one single figure alone and utterly decimate that scapegoat with raucous applause. After that, the problem is fixed. It's yesterday's news, so they wipe their hands and mosey on with life, giving it no further concern. Meanwhile, the actual systemic issue continues on exactly how it always has, but no one's looking anymore. You see this practice in numerous examples today. Look for it and you'll see it. So I am not scapegoating any one article, nor even the specific issue of the attention span. I am using them to illustrate problems we need to address across the board. I think once individuals start to identify these issues here, they can start identifying them in other areas as well. I am using this issue as an example, not a scapegoat. First, we have to take into account the reason why most of these articles exist in the first place. For example, a lot of it comes in the form of nicely designed infographics. I myself work in the design field. A very common practice for a graphic designer is to use some random topic as context to practice their skills. A lot of these articles might simply be someone's folio piece, with little consideration being paid to the actual information at all. The point of an infographic, as with all design generally, is to push a defined narrative. Now, this is not inherently a bad or malicious thing, it's just simply the practice of good communication. The problem is when the designer themselves doesn't really care about the info and are just using it as scaffolding to display their skill. In that case, their sole focus becomes the delivery of a finely honed narrative. It doesn't matter what they're saying, but how they say it. Is that info entirely correct? Are there opposing counterpoints out there that need to be addressed? Doesn't matter. What do you think of their design? And it's not just designers who do this. A hell of a lot of content out there is produced simply to uphold a quota. People just need something to put out that day. They'll have some concept relating to their field, so they'll sensationalize a header to play the clickbait. The info itself doesn't matter. They'll just pack in whatever sounds right so they can get something out the door. But others in the industry then see that topic gaining traction, so they just shove that same narrative in turn to meet their own quotas. Is the info behind it actually accurate? Again, doesn't matter. And the consumer buys into it based upon those headers alone, because this world is just now too complex for us to keep up with. So that narrative becomes our narrative, and we allow it to color our approach to the world, even when obvious counterpoints lie right before our eyes. It really does serve to question as much as we can, and that's what I'm going to be doing now with the facts presented by these articles. Now, I am not going to be delivering countering points here. I am simply going to take each one a single step deeper than the emotional reaction that they are tailored to provide. Because here's the thing, we don't always need the right answer. This world, this life is too complex and beyond our scope to ever fully understand, let alone control. Often it is helpful enough to simply see where the available options are flawed, so you don't then bottleneck yourself into a tunneled view. According to research is a very malleable and convenient phrase. We see it today being thrown around everywhere to justify damn near everything. But there are specific points that need to be addressed in each use of that phrase. What research? Who conducted the research? How large was the focus group? Who were they? Why were they? And under what conditions were they approached? Who funded the research? And what agenda might they have? What counterpoints were conveniently ignored in order to streamline that narrative? When you take that into account, then the phrase according to research can be placed on damn near everything. So thus, according to research, 39% of Americans have forgotten one basic piece of information or lost one everyday item in the past week. Let's think about that. Rather than just accepting that statement as a pillar to support that master narrative, let's actually take a closer look at what that pillar is made of, because it actually sounds like a pretty worthless statement if you ask me. First of all, they include two separate qualifiers there, the forgetting of a basic piece of information and the loss of an everyday item. So how much of that 39% is occupied by either one? Now, drilling down on each individually, what exactly is a basic piece of information? Let's say one of the fresh and fit guys lays out some truth for us betas. Our comrade proclaims how a beta must hide himself because he's fucking worthless and masquerade instead as something he is not. So with that new superior guise, he can now hypnotize and manipulate these women who he despises, and he can rein them into submission for, I guess, revenge. I don't actually know what the payoff is there that these guys are selling. It's basically ISIS, though. It's what they were doing. And in that light, he ends it with some stoic wisdom from Comrade al-Baghdadi himself. Happy be the man who basks within the company of his enemy and lures them to his home where he may dominate and undermine and thus never sleep again for the fear of betrayal. Someone then asks you 5 days later, Comrade, pray tell, What was that fine piece of class-defying brilliance Comrade Fresh bestowed upon us that day? So I may too alpha my way into the quality tang. And you reply, fuck knows. I don't listen to a word those dipshits say, because I don't want to floor my life 200 miles per hour into a fucking wall. So because you have forgotten that basic piece of information, does that now mean that you are suffering from mental decline? I would actually say the opposite. Meanwhile, 61% of Americans are apparently able to recall every single piece of basic information they receive in an entire week. There is no frickin' way that is true. What was the basic piece of information they provided these test subjects? Was it relevant to them? Were they told it was relevant? What else were they doing at the time? As for the losing of an everyday item, the company BIC in the pre-digital age built an entire empire founded upon the ever-fertile grounds of misplaced pens and lighters. Losing an everyday item ain't a new thing. Considering Gen Z tend to have everything in their phones now anyway, I am willing to bet they're losing far less now than we did. Something tells me that stat in itself is a completely worthless example of basic information we would all be better off forgetting. And here are some others. 25% of teens forget major details of close friends and relatives. Again, what are the major details? Are we talking phone numbers, postal addresses, what? That's info we of Gen X used to need to remember as teens, but Gen Z no longer need to because they've got phones with contact lists literally in their pockets. Thinking back to the friends I had and the phone numbers I needed to remember, there were probably no more than like 6. And guess what? I have since forgotten every single one because for what possible reason do I need to remember them? That is a purposefully ambiguous and completely worthless stat cherry-picked to serve a defined narrative. 7% of people forget their own birthday from time to time. From time to time? What does that mean?
Excuse me, ma'am. Quick question for a survey. How would you rate your memory?
Oh, I'd forget my own head if it wasn't screwed on.
Would you say you forget your own birthday from time to time?
I'm sure I do.
Worthless stat. An office worker, on average, will check their email inbox 30 times every hour. Yeah, have you ever worked at an office before? Boring as hell, and your email client is a single tab away. Worthless stat. The average user picks up their phone more than 1,500 times a week, taking up an average of 3 hours 16 minutes a day. Welcome to the 21st century. Most aspects of our lives today are routed through online means. These are the single most revolutionary tools ever developed. They are also flooded with apps that are purposefully designed to both lure and maintain user focus. Not all too surprising that they get used a lot. Worthless stat. On the average web page, users will read at most 28% of the words during an average visit. 20% is more likely. Have you read articles these days? Empty, worthless drivel created for content purposes alone, purposefully padded with as many words as possible to harvest as much scroll time they can possibly achieve. After this video, go and look up online recipes for any meal. Go through several of them and you will see a clearly defined pattern. Here is my scrumptious recipe for blueberry muffins. The whole family will be impressed by these blueberry muffins. Concerned about your weight? Don't worry, there's no sugar in these healthy and nutritious blueberry muffins. Looking for a tasty treat? Try these blueberry muffins. Your husband's workmates will be asking where he got those blueberry muffins. Wait till you see the kids racing in from the backyard to get their hands on these blueberry muffins, and on with this endless shit. Just scrolling past ad after ad until finally getting to the goddamn recipe at the bottom. Get muffin mix, add blueberries, bake 'em. That's it. The entire core info of the article is like 5 lines, and they're all like that. Even mainstream news editorials, you see that same structure. All of the actual information is strategically retained to the very end in order to get you to scroll through the page and pass all the ads. So people only read 28%? Yeah, worthless stat. The average page visit lasts less than a minute, and users often leave web pages for just... oh, Jesus Christ. The average page visit lasts less than a minute, and users often leave web pages in just 10 to 20 seconds. Yeah, because most sites are either simple cult of personality platforms or points of sale for something you don't need. You're not going to pack a lunch and spend the day on some dude's vanity platform. You seek out specific information, the site either has it or it doesn't, and that's it. 10 to 20 seconds sounds perfectly reasonable for me. Worthless stat. Like all of them, worthless stats, and those worthless stats are apparently what this monumental crisis of humanity's failing attention span is founded upon. Meanwhile, Gen Z can hone right in on a video game for 5 hours just fine. They can spend multiple days binging a TV series or multiple hours watching a podcast or a Twitch stream or whatever. When the subject or the content is relevant, people hold their attention. There are countless YouTubers who focus upon essays of cultural commentary, all routinely making videos exceeding 30-minute runtimes. They have no problems. It is only within the light of institutional demand where our shadows depict some huddled image of failure. This kid can't maintain interest in school, so that's ADD, right? Or it is a flawed, narrow-focused society functioning in a completely adverse way to our natural needs. Take your pick. I was diagnosed with ADD because I couldn't hold attention in class. An essay of 500 words seemed impossible to me back then. My book series, Jive 35, 800,000 words. All my stories tend to pull in over 100,000. In school, I couldn't write 500 words. Out of school, I have since written literally millions for fun. Now, do I function well in this society? Hell no, I can barely feed myself, but fuck that, this is me. This straw says that I have ADD and requires me to go on meds. Industrialization, along with the rest of our institutions, has us by the balls. Gen Z, you may not want to hear this, but maybe, just maybe, the problem ain't you. Your attention span is fine. The issue is that the amount of information has exploded all around us, and the vast majority of it is a bunch of worthless, manipulative marketing crap that we don't need to pay attention to. It hurts to hear this because we so desperately need an out for this nightmare fantasy world we live in. The option is to anchor to an excuse. I am worthless, there is no hope, so that's me. Well, afraid not. Because though you may not be the problem, you are absolutely a part of it. And now you need to check back in order to do something about that.
Someone must tell her, you may be the conscience of your generation, but you don't represent it. I really wish you did, Greta, but you don't. But I can show you who does. Greta, you have 13 million followers on Instagram, which is great. But Kylie Jenner has 279 million, which is more. But Kylie embodies and embraces a lifestyle that is pretty much the opposite of carbon neutral. And the younger generations fucking love it. Last week, Kylie posted a tour of her shoe closet, which houses well over 1,000 pairs. She also has entire rooms of things she only's worn once. I don't think Greta would approve of that. In polls, young people always claim to be more concerned about climate change than other generations, but they don't act like it. They throw around buzzwords like sustainable and shame people if we get to bring a cloth bag to Trader Joe's, but one of their favorite YouTubers is Mr. Beast, who's famous for stunts like, I gave my 40 millionth subscriber 40 cars. Jason Derulo celebrated his 22nd millionth follower by eating 22 hamburgers. The cognitive dissonance between planet-destroying conspicuous consumption and planet-saving rhetoric is breathtaking. You say you love Greta and her message, but everything else you love is a climate disaster. Far from rejecting consumerism, young people are so obsessed with labels that venerable fashion houses like Balenciaga have pivoted from selling couture dresses to rich women to selling baseball hats to teenagers. And where does a 20-something get the money to pay $400 for a hat that borrows the Bernie Sanders logo because you're like a socialist and stuff? From mommy and daddy, of course, those huge assholes who ruined the planet. Oh, and also maybe by trading Bitcoin, the mining of which is worse for the environment than actual mining. Cryptocurrency uses more energy than Netflix, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, and Google combined, and more than some entire nations. And yet young people could not love it more if it came with a side of avocado toast. 94% of crypto buyers are either millennials or Gen Z, which makes it ring a little hollow when you're out there chanting for us to put the planet ahead of profits. And what do crypto fans say about this? They say, well, yes, it uses too much energy now, but in the future, oh yeah, the future, that's right. Same thing my generation said. Let them handle it in the future. I'll get mine now. We get it. Boomers dropped the ball on the environment. We did. We dropped it like it was hot. And for that, I can only say, whoops. Yeah, you're right, we dropped it. But have you picked it up? I wish your generation was better than mine. I really do. But the sad truth is, we're completely the same. Lots of talk, and at the end of the day, hopelessly seduced and addicted to pigging out on convenience, luxury, and consumption. So that's it. You can either be the fake tits and private jet generation, or the one that saves the planet. But you can't be both, because fake tits are not biodegradable.
You guys have to carry this world on, and you are either going to push this stuff forward or divert humanity onto an alternate path. Each and every one of us, whether producers or consumers, need to start taking active account of how we engage this world. What are we producing? Is it purely for money? That thing that didn't exist for literally 99% of our timeline? Do people actually benefit from our efforts? What are we consuming? Are we actively engaging with it, or is it simply just to pass the time? Where are we putting our time and our likes? What are we causing the algorithms to promote? The more I think we each take accountability for our own influence, the more we can start to identify these misdirections and self-serving moves that surround us. Make no mistake, we live in a fantasy world. The economy is a fantasy, ones and zeros that we simply agree to provide meaning. Our legal systems and geopolitical frameworks, there is nothing to sustain them apart from simple human agreement. Our religious institutions, regardless of whether you believe the central narrative or not, the human institutions built around those narratives with their hierarchies and doctrines and standards, all of those simply vanish into memory the moment we turn our backs. Our education systems and concepts of accreditation and qualification, simple agreements. Our pursuit of the nuclear family and marriage, personal wealth, what we look for in a traditional spouse, hell, the very concept of exclusivity itself, they are but fantasy as well. Just like our needs for gadgets or followers and likes. We simply switch all this stuff off in our minds and they disappear, all less tangible than this straw. Now, I am not saying it is smart to switch all this stuff off. These institutions we have evolved for a reason, but that doesn't make them right. Once you start seeing them as the facades they are, it starts to become hard to respect them all too much. But this fantasy has consumed us for thousands of years, the period containing all of our recorded history. Most of us don't even realize alternatives are possible. But there are alternatives, and they in fact constitute 99.9% of our existence in our current evolutionary form. That is not hyperbole. For 99.9% of our evolution, we lived in a completely different way with completely different perspectives and priorities to those we have now. This period of our recorded history is where our academics refer in order to learn who we are and how to run our systems. That alternative period, however, of 99% of our existence, is where we evolved all our physiological needs, reward systems, and means for fulfillment, all of which we now adamantly defy in order to serve the demands of our new Lord and Savior, the fucking straw. I have a video I actually relaunched alongside this one called The Dangerous Imbalance Between Reason and Dreams that further explores one avenue of this. I relaunched it because it had audio balancing issues, but I've now lost all the views on that as well, so if you could help me get that rolling again, that would be cool. I also have several videos planned following these themes, so subscribe to this channel if that sounds good. I explore these notions in my books as well, which are available for purchase via my website. You see it right there. Now, They are not written for those of light sensibility, and in this highly commercialized world of social expectation and protecting from offense, my works don't tend to go over too well. But the reality of reality is that it ain't for kids, and I explore into these depths of who I think we really are deep down beneath this fantasy of constructed civilization. I am Gen X. We like things to hit and hurt. That'll be my disclaimer. Gen Z, you have a big problem, but it ain't you. The problem is that you, like the rest of us before you, continue to buy into this fantasy of institutional demand, performance optimization, and sensation and awe. It keeps you ever questioning and doubting, ever searching and yearning for some holy grail that will answer all of your concerns. But you guys, I think, might actually have the chance to live more truly fulfilling lives than any human for thousands of years. All you need to do is release and simply start taking a second look around.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride, and we kill those people.
Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. Has to be real.
It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.
I've launched a Patreon. No one's on it yet, so go on, be the first.